Hello guys, welcome to my SQL series on LearnIn. My name is Nse. Today we are going to talk about string functions. String functions are functions provided by MySQL to allow you to manipulate and work with strings. These functions are designed to perform various tasks on string data, such as extracting strings, converting case, or concatenating strings, etc. Remember that a string is a data type used to store a sequence of characters. It represents textual data such as names, addresses, descriptions. Strings in MySQL can be composed of letters, numbers, special characters, spaces, and any other printable characters. Now let's head over to my SQL documentation on string functions and see the string functions available. I have provided this link in the description. So here we have string functions. It's a lot of string functions from ASCII down to wait string. These are the string functions made available to us by MySQL. In this course, however, we are going to talk about just a few of them. If you would like to know about any of these functions, feel free to visit the documentation. This is the link up here. I have provided it in the description, and you're going to see the various string functions, and you'd be able to read the description here. And if you click on any one of them, just like I clicked on concat, it's going to bring you to where you have a more detailed description with examples of how the function can be used. So let's take a look at the concat function. The concat function returns a string that results from concatenating the arguments. Now, if you look at the syntax, this is the syntax. You would notice that we have concat written, and then we have parentheses, and within the parentheses we have str1, str2. These values within the parentheses are referred to as arguments. We are being told here that concat returns the string that results from concatenating the arguments. When concat function is used, the output is going to be the result of combining the strings provided within this parenthesis. Currently we have 1, 2, and we have these 3 dots showing that it could be more than 2. Now let's come down to the example provided here. In this example, we have select concat. So this means that while using concat in MySQL, you have to write it like this: select concat, and then you are going to have the parentheses, and within the parentheses you will provide the strings which you want to combine to form a new string. The provided strings are separated with comma. Like here we have the first string. Notice that it is wrapped with quotes. It is wrapped with quotes because strings should be wrapped with quotes. And after the first string, which is my, we have a comma. And then we have the second string, which is S. We have a comma after it, and then we have the last string, which is QL, and we don't need a comma in this case because that is the last string provided within this parenthesis. And then, of course, we have the semicolon ending it. And the result of this is MySQL. Now, let's copy this code and let's head over to the command line client. I'll click on maximize here to open it up. And then I'll enter my password as always. And within here in the command line client, let's have this code that we copied from the documentation. I'll hit enter to execute it. Now notice that we have MySQL returned to us. So what the concat function does in essence is that it combines strings to form a new string. This is just one of the examples. Let's go back to the documentation and see more. The second example, we have select concat. The first string provided is my, the second string is null, and the third is QL. Now notice that we have been told here that the concat function is going to return null if any argument is null. In this case, we have one of the arguments as null. The second argument is null. So it means that this entire statement is going to evaluate to null, just like we see here. Let's copy this too. So I'm going to copy this code and I'll paste it here on the command line client. I'll hit enter. Notice that we have null returned to us, just like we have here. And that's basically how the concat function works. Now let us see how to apply that to a table. For this, we need to create a table, and this table is what we are going to use in showing how the various string functions work. Let's copy this table just for convenience. I wrote out the command to create a table here in my workbench. I just prefer to do that because it makes it easier for me. I do not have to type and retype each time because I already have it here written out in workbench. So all I'll do is copy and paste it here. Note also that if we were to execute this query right here in the workbench, this table would be created. But let's use the command line client. So I have pasted in here by right clicking, and I'm being warned that I'm about to paste text that contains multiple lines. And I'm asked to confirm if I want to continue. Yes, I want to continue. So I'd say paste anyway. And this is a statement creating a table for us. The table is employees table, and we have the first column as the ID column. We are giving it data type of int. We want it to be the primary key. That's why we have primary key written here, and then we want it to auto increment. Then we have the second column, first name, and we are giving it data type of varchar, maximum limit of 50. We have the third column as the last name. We are giving it data type of varchar, maximum limit of 50, and then we have the fourth column, which is age, set to data type of int. So I'll execute this just by hitting the enter key of my keyboard. And then we have this error that says no database selected. You will always have this error if you do not specify the database to work with. That is why when I start, I always show us that we need to specify the database to work with. Now we have to specify one because that is the only way to take care of this error. To specify the database, I'd like to see the databases I have currently. So I type show databases just like this with the semicolon, and I'll hit enter, and we have 9 different databases. Out of this, I want to use the bookstore database, so I will type use book underscore store semicolon, and I'll hit enter. Notice here that database changed. I want to be sure that we are actually using the bookstore database, so I will select database. Remember that this is the command with the parenthesis, and then we'll have semicolon. I'll hit enter, and it's been confirmed here that we are using the bookstore database. So now let's paste in our create table command again, and let's hit enter. Notice that this time query is okay. Looks like our table, the employees table, has been created. Let's describe table just by typing DESC employees, or you can type describe in full semicolon, hit enter, and we have our employees table described here just like we specified here, with the ID column type of int. ID column cannot be null. That's why we have no here. Even though we did not specify the not null constraint here, it's set to null for us because it is the primary key column, and the primary key column cannot be null. By that we mean that you cannot leave the primary key column empty, and you cannot explicitly enter null in it. And then we have auto increment under extra here because we have auto increment specified. And for the first name, we have varchar, that's the data type with the maximum limit of 50, and null here is yes because we did not specify the not null constraint. Same as last name, and the age column has data type of int. Null is set to yes, so it can accept null, it can be left empty. And for default, we did not provide any default value for any of the columns. So that's why we have null provided for us here by MySQL. Now that we have our table created, let's insert values into the table. For this, I'll come back here to my workbench. I already have this code typed, so I'll copy it again and I'll paste it here. I'm being warned again that I have multiple lines. I'd say paste anyways, and I'll hit enter, and we have that query is okay, 6 rows affected. Now let's select star from our table, which is employees, and notice that all these values from Inse to Maria have been entered into our table. Now to use the concat function, we can say select concat. In this case, we will use the column names. So let's say we want to combine first name column, first name, we have a comma, and then the last name column. So let's have last name, and we have to specify the table. So we'd say from employees, and we'll end with a semicolon, and then we can execute just by hitting the enter key of the keyboard. Notice here now that we have the values of the first name and the last names combined. We have Nse Sam here because first name is Nse, last name is Sam. We have Jeff Smith here because first name is Jeff and last name is Smith. And we have all the way to Maria Smith because first name is Maria and last name is Smith. Nse Joe because first name is Nse and last name is Joe. Maria Jeff because first name is Maria and last name is Jeff. However, notice that there are no spaces in between, so we could decide to create space in between. To do that, we would have the opening quote, hit the space bar key of your keyboard, close the quotes, and then have a comma. So this is how to introduce a space between two strings. In this case, first name, last name, we need a space in between every first name and last name. That's why we have the space character here. Now let's execute the query. Notice now that we have space created between the first name and the last name. We have Nse space Sam, we have Dave space Smith, all the way to Maria space Smith. So that's just how it works. Now notice here that the heading is very long and it could be confusing. So this is a good time to introduce an alias. This is a lazy way to do it. And you could bring back that line of code just by touching the up arrow key of the keyboard. And then I'll use the left arrow key to go to where I want to type the alias. So we're going to say select concat first name space last name as, let's call it full name. From the employees table, let's hit enter. Now notice that the heading is noun full name, and then we have the first name space last name combined for all the 6 rows of our table. So you can see how the concat function can be useful if you're working with an actual table in real life. Maybe you have a first name, like in this case, and you have a last name, and you just need the first name and the last name to come together. You could use the concat function in achieving that. Let's look at another function. I'm looking for the substring function. These functions are arranged alphabetically, so you could either search or scroll down to where you possibly have S. In here we have substring function, we have substr, and we have substring. It looks like they do the same thing because they both return the substring as specified. So I'm going to click on this substring function and it brings us to where we have the description and we have examples. It also shows the syntax. Substring function forms smaller texts from a larger piece of text. That's putting it simply, because some of these descriptions, maybe you could find them confusing. This is the syntax provided. You would have substring written, you have parentheses, and then you provide string, the larger piece of text. In this case, that's the string where you want to form a smaller text from. So that's the string, and then you provide position. Position has to be a number. So if we check this example here, you would see that we have the select before having any function name. So we have select substring, and the substring that is being provided here is quadratically, and the position provided here is 5. So what this simply says is, considering this string quadratically, get to position 5 and then form a substring. The smaller piece of text formed from this larger piece of text is what is being referred to as substring. So I'll be saying substring from here on. So it says, considering quadratically, come to position 5. That's the 5th character in quadratically. 1, 2, 3, 4. R here is the 5th character. And now it's going to form a substring using characters from the 5th position to the end of the string. So we would have radically returned to us, just like it's being shown here. So if we copy this code, let's copy it. Let's head over to command line client and let's paste it and hit enter. Notice that we have radically returned to us here. Let's come back here to the documentation. The second example is like the first example, except that this comma is replaced with from. So you could decide to write the command like this: select substring, you provide the larger piece of text in quotes, you have from, and then you provide the position to start from, and it's going to be just like using a comma. Let's look at this. We have full bar written here, and it says from position 4. So let's count. F is on 1, O is on 2, the second O is on 3. So B is on position 4. What this says is form a substring from position 4 to the end of the string. So we would have bar returned to us just like we have here. And the third syntax shows us two numbers. When you have two numbers, it means the first number is the position and the second number is the length. That's this third syntax here. The second syntax is the one that uses from. We explained it with full bar. The third syntax is the one that uses two numeric values, in which case the first numeric value, just like we see here, is the position. The second is the length. So what this means here is from position 5, take length of 6. So from position 5, we have R, counting 6 from R, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It stops at A here. So we're going to have Ratika returned to us, just like we have seen here. And we can have a negative number. So when you have a single negative number like this, this shows the position. So this command says, considering Sakila here, count 3 from the last character of the string. The last character is A. So we are going to count 1, 2, and 3. The substring formed will now be ILA. When you have a negative value, you simply count from the last character of the string. Now, in the fifth example here, we have two numeric values, but the first one is -5. That's for the position, and the length value is 3. This command is saying, considering Sakila, starts counting from the last character, count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that the substring would be from letter A here, and from A we are going to go length of 3. So we'd have 1, 2, and 3. It's at the point of I that we have length of 3. So that means that the substring would be AKI, Aki, or whatever you'd want to call it. And the last example here is same as the fifth example, only that from is used in place of the first comma here, and then for is used in place of the second comma here. So rather than have Sakila, comma, -4, comma, 2, we have Sakila from -4 for 2. This -4 is still the position, and this 2 is length. So it means from position -4, go length of 2. So on Sakila here, we are going to count 4 from the last character of the string. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the fourth character, and then we would go length of 2 from K, 1, 2, and it gives us KI returned. So that's basically how the substring function works. So here, if we had, say, select substring, just a different example from what we have in the documentation, hello world. let's start from 1 and let's go length of 5. Then we have semicolon, hit enter. Notice that we have hello returned to us. That's because we started from 1 and we counted 5. We could say select from 7. Let's just use only one numeric value. Remember that using one numeric value means that would be the position to start, and it's going to start from that position all the way to the end of the string. Let's execute this query. Now notice that we have world returned to us because W is on the 7th position if we were to count. H is 1, E is 2, first L is 3, second L is 4, O is 5. Remember that space counts. Space is a character too. So this space is number 6 and W is 7. So we took from 7 to the end of the string, and that's why we have world. I hope that you get the point. Now we can combine these functions together. We can work with both the concat function and the substring function in one statement. Considering our employees table, let's say that we want to get the initials of the employees. So in this case, we are going to get the first letter of the first name, and we will also get the first letter of the last name, and then we would put these letters together to form initials. Let's do that. So in that case, we would have select, and we are going to have concat because we want the concat function to run after the substring function. So we would wrap the substring function within the concat function. So we would have substring written like this, and the first substring that we want to consider, we want it to come from our employees table. So in that case, we would just simply provide the name of the column that we want to consider. While working with column names, you don't have to wrap them with quotes. Just simply write the column name like so. And then we need to have a comma and would specify the position, start from position 1 and take just one character. And I'm going to close the parenthesis. This takes care of the first name. This would give us the substring of the first name. So now I'll have another comma here, and I'm going to have substring again, this time for last name, and then we want position 1 and length of 1, 2, and we will close the parenthesis, and then I would say from employees because that's the table we are working with. This can be confusing. Take it bit by bit and then you get to the end of the command, and let's hit enter. Now notice that we have the first letter of the first name and the first letter of the last name written, and they are just written together, no space, no punctuation whatsoever. We have NS, JS, MC, just like that to the end, where we have MS for Maria Smith. So we could decide to introduce dots so that we'll have a dot after the initial of the first name and would have another dot after the initial of the second name, and we should get an alias to replace this long heading here. So for that, I'll bring back this line of query and I will come here within the parentheses. I'd have quotes, have dots, and close the quotes, have a comma, and also after the last name substring, I'll have another comma, I'd have quotes wrapping the dot sign, because this is the position where we want the first dot. Immediately after the first initial, we should have a dot, and after the second initial, we should have a dot too. And then I'll come out of the parenthesis and I would create the alias. I'd say as full name, and let's execute this query. Now notice that we have n.s.j.s. This is just showing how to use the concat function and the substring function in one statement. Now let me open the workbench, and we called this full name. Well, I think you would have been better called initials, but it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to really show here is not the alias, is how to combine the concat function and the substring function. So notice how lengthy and clumsy this one-liner looks. You could decide to have line breaks. You could decide to write your code and break them into new lines. This way it would be easier to read. You could easily spot errors and correct them before executing the code. So this is the exact same statement as this one line here. Select, concat, all of this long thing. So rather than have it that long, you could introduce new lines as you will. If I copy this code and paste it here, and let's run the query, notice that it runs as well with no errors. So you could decide to have new lines just to make the code easier to read. I hope that you get the point. This substr is a synonym for substring. So this means that substr is the same as substring. You could decide to have string abbreviated to str, or you could decide to have it written in full. It's the exact same thing. It's just up to you to decide which one works for you better. I prefer to write it in full, but it's totally up to you which you would prefer to use. Now let's go to replace. So the replace function replaces parts of a string with something new. In this syntax, you can see that we have str provided here. This string is going to be that original string value in which you would want to replace something. The next argument is showing the part of this first argument that you would want to be replaced, and then the third argument is showing the new value to use in place of this second string provided here. And let's use this example to explain. We have replace and we have www.mysql.com. From within www.mysql.com, we want to replace this W, and we are replacing it with uppercase W and lowercase w together like this. So executing this command is going to now change this string to www.mysql.com, like however many W's that are here. The idea is that at every point where we have W in this string, we replace it with this string. I hope that you get the point. Now let's head over to command line and let's have select replace, just showing us our own example, and let's have hello world. And inside of hello world, we want to replace world. We want to replace world with people. So we'll have the semicolon end it, and let's execute this query. Now notice that we have hello people in place of hello world. Note, however, that the replace function is case sensitive. So you always have to ensure that all the letters are in the exact same case. For example, we're trying to replace world here. Ensure that the casing in world here is the exact same casing with world here. Otherwise, this would not give you the desired value. For instance, let's have lowercase w here where we have uppercase w in the original string. Now let's execute this query. Notice that we still have hello world returned to us. Nothing has changed. But when we had the letter casing in the exact same way, we were able to replace world with people. So while using replace function, pay particular attention to letter casing. Now let's talk about the upper function. You may want to check in the docs, but I'll just go ahead and explain. What the upper function does is that it is going to convert the given string. Let's say we had hello all in lowercase. It's going to change it to all uppercase letters. Let's have semicolon and let's execute this query. Notice we have hello all in uppercase. Let's apply this to our table. Let's say select upper. Let's use the first name column. Select upper. Remember, while working with columns from a table, you don't need to wrap in quotes. You just need to provide the table name. So we'd say from employees, and let's execute the query. Notice that all the first names are in uppercase now. There is also the lower function, which does the opposite of what the upper function does. Is going to convert from uppercase. Let's say we have hello here, all in uppercase. It's going to convert it to all lowercase. Let's run this query and see that we have hello printed all in lowercase. And if we could use our table too, we could say select lower. This time let's use the last name column and would have from employees, and you would see that all the last names are in lowercase. Now if we were to check the employees table is not in here, we simply have to click this refresh icon here and we have the employees table, and if you hover on it you'll have these three icons. I'll just click on this one that looks like a table and you can see that we have our table shown to us. And if we check the last name column, you notice that all the last names begin with an uppercase letter, but after using the lowercase function on the last name column, we have all the last names come back with no uppercase letter whatsoever. That's simply how to use the lower function. I hope that you get the point. Now, before we wrap up, let's quickly talk about just one function, and that's the character length function. The character length function, written as char length, shows the number of characters in a string. Let's say select, the function is written as char length. You could decide to look it up in the documentation, and let's provide hello in it, and let's have the semicolon ending it, and let's hit enter. Now notice that we have 5 returned to us. That is the length of hello. In hello we have 5 characters. Let's say that we want to apply the char length function to our table, we'll just have child length, and then let's apply it to the last name column. Let's have last name, and let's say from provide the table name employees. So we end up with select child length parenthesis, and then within the parenthesis we provide our argument last name, and then we say from employees. Let's hit enter, and then notice that we have 355,435. These are the various lengths of the last names that we have in our table. I would want us to have the last name and this length side by side. So let's select last name column first, then have a comma, and then let's now have the length of each of the last names printed. Let's execute this query. Now notice that we have the last name listed, and then we have the column showing the child length of each last name. Sam has length of 3, Smith has length of 5, and Cliff has length of 5 to Jeff length of 4, Joe length of 3, and that's it. That's basically how the child length function works. This is the much that we are going to take as far as string functions. If you would like to see more of the string functions, please refer to the docs. I have provided this link in the description. Read the descriptions, click on any one that you would like, and it's going to bring you to where you'd have the description and examples shown. If you have any questions or comments, please say them in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to learn in. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.